I will start again from Ois Samach. Having explained that there is two madrigas in makif. In makif hakloli, there are makif protein which pertain to certain specific aspect. The makif hakloli is that which encompasses everything equally. This is what gives validity to everything that exists equally, as we already discussed this phenomenon. And we said that in makif hakloli itself there are two madrigas. There is what's called the makif as it is lifnei the tzimzum, before the tzimzum, and then the makif, this same functions of this makif after the tzimzum. And we gave a mashal on this, which I believe is a good mashal for it. And that is that when a person conceptualizes a house or a room in the house, he projects not only the room but also the function and the furnishings that will be in this room. But at this point, all the furnishings are encompassed in one bigger reality. This is a room in this house. Even though each piece of furnishing has its particular function, but it all fits, it all is encompassed, it's only absorbed by the greater thing of this room. And this encompassment exists on two levels. This I'd like we should understand. When a person identifies a room in his house as being the dining room, he at that moment projects where the table is going to be, where all the chairs are going to be, whatever else is going to fit into the dining room. And all of these things are derivatives of the fact that this is a dining room. Before the dining room was actually furnished, but it projects what it should be. Then afterwards, when the dining room is already fully furnished, and you have all the furnishings, still there remains the union that these furnishings are valid only because they are in the dining room. Take these same furnishings outside the dining room, they lose their status. Which means the dining room, even after that they are real pieces of furniture, the dining room is what gives them validity. This is after that they are furnishing. So we have the makif, the makif, before, when it is still in the human mind, before it becomes a reality, and then afterwards, when it's already identified with the mitzias. This is the two makifim that the Rebbe is referring to. This is a mashal for the two makifim. Before tzimzum is the way it is in Etzem. And it is projected, the makif is already projecting what's going to come of this makif, what can come from this makif. And then there is, afterwards, where there is an actual makif, And the makif is now identifying all the things that come from it. These are two levels in makif. And the Rebbe now is saying, no, samach, that now, now we need to understand what difference does it make relative to the worlds and its effect on the worlds. We understand the difference in the makif itself. But legabe ho'elam is relative to the worlds in its effect to the world. What is the difference between makif hakloli shenifnei hatzimzum, between the makif hakloli that's before the tzimzum, which is the higher makif, lebechinas makif hakloli she'achar hatzimzum. How is that different than the beginning of makif hakloli that's after the tzimzum? Because both are a makif hakloli that encompasses and identifies the entire world and everything that's in the world. But there is two levels. This is how the world is identified from the Oyer Makif as it is emanated from the Etzem itself before the Tzimtzum, and then how it is also contained after the Tzimtzum, which means the world has already begun to be identified. And yet it's also a Makif HaKloli. Like we had in this motion, which I think is a decent motion that helps us to understand this principle. Okay, the second line in this small paragraph that begins as Ayis Samach. The Vadai, for surely, the Rebbe is asking the question, we have to understand the difference. On what basis are we asking the question?
To remain on this call, press 1.
I'm not sure. Forget it, right?
Yeah, if he's not calling in, forget it.
Huh?
If he's not going to call in, then forget it.
On what basis are we asking the question? If you don't know the difference, how do you know that there is a difference? So the Rebbe says the question is based on the following. The Vadai, for surely, even if we don't know to explain it, Yesh, Hefresh, still surely there is a difference between Makif HaKloli D'Tira Tato and Makif HaKloli D'Tira Elo. Surely there is a difference between these two Makifim in terms of how they affect the world. And this definite perception is so different that we have a question, and it behooves us now to delve into it and see what is the difference between one and the other.
Why is it so sure that there's a difference in Tira Tatu and Tira Eloah? If it was...
All right. So the Rebbe is explaining himself, but before we go that, we go further. The Rebbe says, Vadai. For sure, yesh happens to Makif HaKloli and Tira Tato and Makif HaKloli and Tira Eloah. This vados, this certainty, is a seichel kind of a certainty. This is not a kind of a munah. This is, the seichel dictates that for sure there is a difference. And what's the point of saying that? And you want to explain it, explain it. The point of saying that this is very important. This is the Rebbe's stance. The Rebbe makes a statement like this, and because he wants that we should delve into our own seichel. We do not, as I said many times, we do not perceive, we can't surmise what depth there is in our own seichel. Except that we hardly begin to use it to its fullest. We begin to use seichel when we have a kasha. A kasha, oh, let's look for an answer. But seichel is not based on kashas. Seichel is a gilui hanefesh. Comes from Rotzen and Noinak. There's no kashas. How the kirichel emanate from Rotzen? Because there's a kasha. So therefore, this is a normal perception that a person has because he has seichel. That makif hakloli shlifnei hatzimzum versus makif hakloli she'achar hatzimzum, their impact on the world is different. Even though they're both makif hakloli. Okay, last time we learned, I stopped and I said,
How can we understand something of it? Because it's daily law, it's in a different world. In my mind, that's why it must be, it's different.
I'm willing to go into this, if everybody else is also. The reason I'm willing to go into this is that these are the types of steps that reveal our own seichel to ourselves, that make us sensitive to that which we recognize in our seichel. I mentioned the other day, many times actually, this is going on for a long time, that daylight is not created by light, it's created by the presence of the sun itself. Now the Hom Chitzenis, this secular wisdom, will deny this altogether. This is true only to the human seichel. But in the human seichel, he can identify with it. He can sense it. Why? Because human seichel has the idea, has the insight that an etzem has a certain impact. Not only that which I get from it, but the presence of the etzem has an impact. We always give this very, very down-to-earth marshal. If you have a feast, a meal, there's a meal. But it's not the meal that brings you there. It is its impact. What is the in and what is it about? If you had the very same meal without this significance, like I said the other day, if somebody comes as invited as a guest to somebody's home, and he served a hefty meal, he says, "Oh, looks like a good meal. Good, I'm going to pack it up and take it home and eat it in my own kitchen." We would call this man what?
Boer.
A boor?
A boer.
A boor? An idiot. An idiot. He's not sensitive to what's going on. Where does the sensitivity come from? This is a seichel level of sensitivity. This is seichel. This is what the REBBE gave us in seichel. Seichel is not just a means to figure out 2 times 2. Seichel is what gives us the reality of the world in which we live. We said yesterday that when you see a good piece of furniture being broken down, destroyed, it bothers you. If you're a sensitive human being, it bothers you, even though it's not yours. And perhaps the owner of the furniture can well afford to replace it. It's not something that's going to affect the human being in a very serious manner. But just a good thing being destroyed is something that bothers you. Because the world is real. It's an offense against the creator of the world. These sensitivities we have because of our seichel. This is what seichel is. Seichel, as you said, is a very profound Indian. That's why seichel is so dear to us. A human being was blessed with seichel. But seichel is able to know how to get around. The cat also knows how to find it, how to get around. Therefore, the Rebbe is presenting this question. And he says, surely, what's the point of doing that? It is in order to arouse in us the necessity that we're bound to delve down and to understand these words in the Maimer. Before he goes to explain. Therefore, surely, yesh hafresh be makif makloli, the tira tato, makif makloli tira ilo. Surely there's a difference. The point of saying this, even though he's going to explain, he has to explain. The point of saying this is in order to force us to delve into our own seichel that the Rebbe gave us. Seichel is a reflection of the truth of the neshama. Mitzad, the truth of the neshama, we sense there's a difference between how Tiratoi affects the world and how Tiratoi affects the world. Okay, so let's continue. The Hagam.
So what's the why we didn't connect back to Tira
We're still going. How to connect? We're still going. What?
No, but he asked the question. No, just ask.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's your question?
He asked the question. No,
Okay, what's his question?
I thought the question was the difference between Tehiri law and Tira.
No, that wasn't.
Oh,
my
that we
question.
learned already. Tiri law is
For the tzimzum.
the makif hakloli before when it is before the tzimzum, and when it is after the tzimzum. Let me talk about this for a moment. Very important because we may lose sight of this. To give us some kind of an approach to we have to take it all from a human experience, from human perception. How this thing is reflected in the human being. This is the miracle that human being reflects everything in Seder Ishtalshalos. Once a person is married, he has a family, and he has to house the family, so to provide for them with housing and comfort and so forth. Then the house per se, the home, is well defined. What is it about? How can I? It's a practical necessity. But then there is another principle that we're told about house. Odom shein lebayis, eilei odom. It's a Gemara. A medrash. Should I translate that? No, this is not the first time in my. Odom shein lebayis. What for? He doesn't need a home. Let me explain what that means. Odom shein lebayis and yodom. Doesn't mean that he's exposed to the elements and standing in the rain. He may be a very wealthy man, and he can well afford a room in the hotel. The minute there's a threat of rain, he goes into a hotel, pays his $100, it doesn't bother him a bit. He's in a hotel, and he's well protected, and yet he's Odom Shevet Bayis. He's in a hotel, he's in somebody else's domain. He doesn't have a real place in the world. Ein Odom. What's that about? Why does the home have to be his own? That he owns it? Practically speaking, there's absolutely no difference. This is as the union of a home is rooted in the very reality of the human being. This material law before the tzimzum. Everything that REBBE created, as I mentioned many times, again, you can mention it, but you have to really think. Nothing is an afterthought in the creation of the world. Oh, we need rivers, we need lakes, we need oceans. So let's give that. No, that's the entirety of the world was created with its in perfect and completeness. A river does not change the definition of a world. On the contrary, the definition of a world is what demands there should be a river. And the same definition demands there should be a lake. The same definition is demands there should be a mountain, there should be a valley. So these same truths, please not understand. The reason that the world requires that there should be a mountain and a valley, and a lake and a river, and all the things that come in the world, is yes, after the world is created, obviously they need all these things. But much, much deeper, at the conception of the world, because it was conceptualized by whom? By God. In the divine conception, everything exists. Because the divine conception represents the reality of things. From the reality of things, at the level of the divine level, everything is there. Not because of its impact, not because of its necessity for survival, but because that's its definition as it is perceived, contained in the divine mind. This is what gives it total reality. This is makif hakloli shelifnei hatzimtzum al yachar hatzimtzum. Lifnei hatzimtzum means before it came into being, as it is contained within the will of the Creator. Lachar hatzimtzum is after that he was identified as a world. Both of these states are true. After it was identified as a world, it already you could say that the world in a sense demands it, but it demands it not because it's going to get wet, but because it's the truth. It's the reality itself. Like I said, even if you stand in the rain, you don't need a home to protect yourself against rain. You can go into a hotel. So that's not what a home is.
I'm trying to correlate this with the idea of man being planned ahead of time, and all the creatures being implicit in the earth itself. It will
In the
be
earth?
not a that he wasn't created by speech. That man was a thought was.
And I have to be. There are many things that I can conjure out from your words. Tell me exactly what your question is.
The idea that every detail, like a river, is a forethought.
Is what?
Is part of a forethought. It's been thought of before, as part of the world. It's included in the thought of the whole world.
Go ahead.
So by implication, each individual one of us is, I think, what you're getting at.
But man is different. It's specifically different.
So this is a question which I ask many times. Imagine there's a world, our world, with all the various species, everything, from the plant life into the beast, into the fish, into the fowl, everything, but the human being.
Mm-hmm.
Would you call that a
No.
world?
No.
So the world, it meant to be a human being in order to be worthy of its name. True, the human being is in a category by himself. I said it the other day. Human being is really not part of the creation. But Tzarmenik was saying he's the godly presence in the world. But without a godly presence, the world is not a world. Just like your home, without the owner, is not a home.
The problem with this is that two things. First of all, I'm allowed to go a little further. That he says Shnei makif and calls the shtachos b'shavo.
Right.
So
You know what? Let's get there. Otherwise, we stand on one place. Okay.
no, but Poyel, they're both makifim on the first level. So
That's
how?
what.
No, but I'm saying even makif and tirei law of after tzimzum is the
Tirei
first
ketur.
level of a makif.
Yeah.
So how could you say that that's already a makif that's shaykh la'ilmus? I mean, basically.
Oh, then yeah, you went a little further than.
No, I didn't go that far.
Yeah.
But that's what I understand from your words. If you're saying that this is that the makif, if I understood correctly, the difference between the tirei law and Torah and the marshal was that the tirei law is the person mitzad the house, mitzad himself, that he needs the house. And then tirei Torah is
No.
the person.
Needs a house is not Tirei law.
I'm sorry. I meant to say that without the need for a house.
Odom sheni bayis in the Yod.
Yeah. Tirei Torah is already a need for a house. But a need for a house already is or a shaykh la'ilmus.
Tirei Tata is the need for a house, you said?
I thought that's what he said. I mean, it's,
A need for a house is not a makif in Yadro. So it does not go in category. The lower level in our Misholim, in our Moshel is, if we're talking about the need of a house, it's not in the makif level at all. The year from Odom Shen Bayis in the Odom is not identified by the fact that a house could be serving a human being. Let's understand this a little bit. It's not because a house could be certain human being. Why any Odom is a very drastic statement. Why any Odom? He can live a very decent life. He lives in hotels. So I once explained what is the principle behind Odom Shein Lebayis and Odom. A human being has been granted with tremendous qualities, capabilities. To the extent that he was given the ability and the right to rule the world. To rule the world. He's a super creature in the world. In order to rule the world, you have to be, in order to rule the world for the human being, he has to be in the world, establish what is world. You can rule the world from a distance. You can rule the world if you are not rooted in it. If you do not experience the presence of the world, you cannot be a ruler in it. You have to become part of it. There's a cloud in what it says, in the Sanhedrin, just thought of it, in Sanhedrin, there's a law that a member of the Sanhedrin has to be somebody who has sensitivities to the human difficulties of life. Number one, he himself is laden with little children. He has no kids, he cannot be a member of Sanhedrin because he doesn't have the union for Nachmon, he doesn't appreciate the difficulties that people have in raising children and becoming in life. There are other things that are required to be in Sanhedrin. He has to pass out din for Apir Shechol Norach. In order to understand the names of Apir Shechol Norach, he has to be part of the world. When a machlokes, a shayla comes to him, he has to be able to relate to the shayla. He can't say, "Hey, what are you making a big fuss about?" He can be a judge in that case. He has to be able to understand. Ad pruta achareno, even if the value is only on one pruta, he has to be able to relate to it. Otherwise, it's not a road. So this is the makif hakloli she'achar hatzimtzum. Now hakloli shlifnei hatzimtzum. Lifnei hatzimtzum, he does not directly relate to it. So how then does he know about it? He knows about it from a divine perspective. What is the saying? The Rebbe wants that there should be a world. And therefore, he relates to it that way.
Therefore,
He relates to it that way. From the inception of the world, not from its factual being.
So
Both
it's on the
are
Eibishter's part.
Let me finish your sentence. The Rebbe is never in a state that he projects and says, "Oh yeah, that's very difficult. I don't know how. I would not be able to tolerate this." The Rebbe is never in that state that he, so to speak, includes himself in the difficulty and human difficulties. How then does the Rebbe understand the human being? We have in the Torah, it says, the Rebbe said to Avram, Eir dono be'era, let me go down and see. Also. Rashi says, he will learn that a dayan cannot pass in the shaila unless he actually identifies, participates in it. The Rebbe himself, he knew everything what's in there. He says, no, I have to go down, and I'll go down. This is, not to say directive to dayan. But the difference is when the dayan experiences, he actually can experience on his own skin. But the Rebbe doesn't have that. So the Rebbe has a clear knowledge of everything without being personally impacted. I hope you understand that. So some people come and say, you're not personally impacted, how can you be a judge on me? And the answer is, Rebbe's knowledge is a knowledge from a neshama level itself. In other words, before there is any kind of confusion in the knowledge,